There was another attempted terrorist attack today that's getting much less press. Quote, authorities announced today that an explosion at an NAACP building in Chicago was caused deliberately and are on the lookout for a potential suspect. They say, according to the LA Times, an improvised explosive device was placed on the outer wall of the NAACP's chapter headquarters and detonated early Tuesday morning. Though the damage to the building itself was minimal, a red gasoline canister was placed next to the bomb, but it did not ignite. Okay, so if it did ignite, it could have been an absolute disaster and a bloodbath. And we wouldn't just be focusing on the Charlie Hebdo situation today. We would also be focusing on this. Although maybe not really, because you and I both know how the different kinds of terrorism are covered by the U.S. media. One of them, they act like it doesn't exist. The other one, they act like is the only kind of terrorism anybody's ever done in the history of the world. Of course, Islamic terrorism. So according to the FBI, the suspect is a, quote, balding white man in his 40s who may be driving a dirty pickup truck, which could have an open tailgate or a missing or covered license plate. I love how this guy likely thinks that black people all fit the stereotype of black people. Meanwhile, he fits the stereotype of white trash. Balding white guy in his 40s, dirty pickup truck, tailgate out, covered license plate. Please. Now, here's an aspect of the story that I think is very telling. Some media outlets, when reporting the suspect, they left out the fact that he's a white man. They put, it's a balding man in his 40s. Now, I present it to you. If there's an attack on the NAACP, who pops in your head first? But they went out of their way to bend over backwards to say, well, no, it was just a balding man in his 40s, even though, according to the FBI, they said a white balding man in his 40s. Now, what does that tell you? And by the way, these are mainstream media outlets that did this. We're not talking about WorldNet Daily or something like that. What does that tell you? Again, it tells you that when it's Muslims, we are quick to call it terrorism and we're quick to describe them as Muslims and attribute their actions to their religion. But when it's a right-wing terrorist or a Christian terrorist, or in this case, a racist terrorist, they're hesitant to call a spade a spade. And this is across the board. The issue today is very clear, and that's why it's worth mentioning today. But also, we covered it last week. There were 3 attempted arson attacks with Molotov cocktails and by other means in Sweden at mosques over the past week and a half or so. 3 separate attacks on Muslims. That got almost no coverage in American media. There was the neo-Nazi compound in northern Florida that we covered on the show. I didn't see anybody else cover that in the mainstream media. The guy got sentenced to jail time for attempting terrorism. There was the Phineas movement, the shooting in Texas. Again, Christian terrorism. They say we're Christian terrorists. Very few people covered that. There's been how many sovereign citizen attacks in America in the past year or two? Way more than Muslim terrorist attacks, that's for sure. I know because we've covered them on the show before. We've done at least 4 or 5 separate segments talking about all the different attempted terrorist attacks and successful terrorist attacks from the right-wingers. The Georgia courthouse. This is, 6 months ago? Georgia courthouse attacked by a sovereign citizen? Again, extremist right-wing, or right-wing terrorist, I should say. When they cover those issues, they don't cover it as if it's terrorism, and they cover it as if it's a lone nut. They go, oh, you know how they are. Crazy, depressed, lone wolf white guy. That's how it goes. That's the narrative for those people. But the narrative for Muslims, even if it's a Muslim who just commits a crime, they somehow immediately assume it's got to be terrorism and they connect it to terrorism. And they also assume that everybody else is guilty who are of the same ethnicity as the Muslim, right? And of the same religion as the Muslim. Because this is how racism manifests itself today. And this is how, you know what, that's not even fair. This is how xenophobia manifests itself today. Because you're willing to give your clan, your tribe, your group, your race, your religion a pass. So when anybody does anything wrong in the name of your ideology, if it's conservatism, or your religion, if it's Christianity, it's just, again, a lone wolf. But if it's the other, well, then you always say it's because they're a representative of the group. And by the way, you see this with white crime versus black crime, too. If a black person does it, they attribute it to the entire culture. Oh, you know how that gangsta culture is, the thug culture is. You know, oh, the dissolution of the family, you know how they are. So they connect it to all black people when it's one black person doing a crime. But if it's a white person, it's not connected to all white people. And if it's a white person even doing it in the name of conservatism, they don't connect it to conservatism. And if it's a white person doing it in the name of Christianity, they don't connect it to Christianity. But if you're black and you do it, it's connected to blackness. If you're Muslim and you do it, it's connected to your religion. Look, all I want in each individual case is pure objectivity. That's all I'm asking for. That's all I'm asking for. So if it's a conservative terrorist, say this is anti-government terrorism. Just say it. If it's Christian terrorism from the Phineas movement, say this is Christian terrorism. If it's the KKK, say this is Christian racist terrorism. If it's Muslim terrorism, call it Muslim terrorism. All I want in every case is objectivity, and you're allowed to make distinctions, and you're allowed to have nuance too. Like, for example, if there's a sovereign citizen that commits a terrorist attack, and he's a devout Christian, but the attack was not in the name of his religion, Christianity, if it was because he wanted low taxes and he wants to abolish the IRS, great, make that distinction. That's all I want. I just want the facts. I just want objectivity. I just want you to tell me in each case exactly what's going on. But we don't see that. We get a slanted, skewed perception and picture of the world.